Hello, welcome back to Franklin Covey's On Leadership with Scott Miller podcast, now the world's largest weekly podcast dedicated to the topic of leadership, where we distribute each Tuesday both audio and video interviews, where I'm privileged each week to sit in this chair and interview some of the brightest, most interesting people in the world, whether it's Emmanuel Acho, Matthew McConaughey, Elizabeth Smart, Deepak Chopra, Liz Wiseman, Susan Cain, Dan Pink, Seth Godin, Stephen M.R. Covey, Brene Brown, Robin Sharma, Ambassador Huntsman, General McChrystal, Doris Kearns Goodwin, you name it. We have interviewed them all. And today our guest is going to knock your socks off. Before we go there, we each year also produce a book about this podcast. I'm the author with HarperCollins. It's called Master Mentors. Volume 1 and Volume 2 are out in paperback, also in digital, audio, and video on Lit Video Books, where each year I am privileged to write a short, easy breezy chapter about 30 of my favorite guests, people that have had a transformational insight shared on the podcast that I think is worthy of a little bit further writing on it. Pick up a copy of Master Mentors Volume 3, coming out with 30 new guests, 30 new stories in the fall. Our guest today is Dr. Eric Thomas. You know him as the force of nature, perhaps the world's most contagiously positive person. His recent book is called You Owe You, and he's joining us today from his studio in Michigan. Dr. Thomas, welcome to On Leadership.
Thank you for having me. Super excited. As you know, Stephen Covey, all you guys' work has transformed all of our lives. As a matter of fact, I just recently had my team on, of course, this book his son helped produce. And that, of course, changed my life, The Speed of Trust, and just really helping leaders understand how critical character, integrity, and all that stuff is. And so what an honor to go from, his books, his son's work, to actually being, with you guys today. So, man, super excited to be here.
Eric, you're a class act. Thank you for calling out Dr. Covey and his son, Stephen M.R. Covey. His book, The Speed of Trust, is a seminal book. The 13 Behaviors of High Trust Leaders makes us all better people. Today, we're going to get into just a couple of topics. You have a broad-ranging set of passions and expertise, but today I want to talk really around two big topics, and that really is about victim mentality and discovering your superpowers. We have about 30 minutes together. Eric, for those last few people that just crawled out from a cave where they were on sabbatical from the world for the last 25 years, would you introduce yourself to them and let everyone know your journey to become now the author of You Owe You, Ignite Your Power, Your Purpose, and Your Why?
Yeah, I was one of those kids, unfortunately, who, had a victim's mentality, and didn't value, appreciate the hand I was dealt. As you know, Doc teaches us in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, when the book starts off, you talk about perspective. It's like, hey, you got these individuals who are upset with this guy on the train. And it's kind of like, hey, why is he letting his kids run all over the place? Like, what's going on? And it's this thing of perspective. It's like, hey, perspective is everything. And so that was one of the books in my journey that really helped me realize, nobody is born with a perfect life. Everybody has a hand. Everybody has to play their hand. So my mom was 17 when she got pregnant, south side of Chicago. My grandmother had 14 kids, 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. Nobody had careers. People didn't graduate from high school. My father was a high school dropout, wasn't in my life. Poor me. My mother lied about my biological father. I'm gonna run away from home, drop out of school. And, one of the cool things about dropping out of school and being homeless is, you're not protected by your mom anymore. Like, you're dealing with real life. And so life hit me like, hey, you're eating out of trash cans, you're living in abandoned buildings. And that's rough in the winter of Detroit. You're talking wind chill factors that leave it -3, 12 inches of snow. Reality kind of hit me and was like, hey, you made some very poor decisions. And either you could play this victim role, it's your mom's fault for having you so young, not being married. It's your biological father's fault for not being in your life, not being a role model, not giving you the things you need to start life off. Or you can deal with the fact that you've made some choices and it's not the greatest habits in the world. And you need to relinquish some of the habits you currently have. And you need to embrace, the habits of highly effective people. And so that's what my journey has been. And that's what I teach. Like, hey, guys, there's some just traits of the greats. They aren't people who were born gods. They don't necessarily have advantages that you don't have per se, but they have habits that you don't have. And you need to embrace those habits if you want to have a successful life.
Eric, my apologies to you for not being able to summon any legitimate endorsers for your book. These names like Chris Paul and Michael Jordan and Deion Sanders and Ed Milet. How did you become such a superstar and be the center of this amazing group of influencers? Chris Paul, Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders, Ed Milet. What did you do to change your life from a victim in Michigan to being homeless to now being a worldwide sensation of a bastion of positivity? Well, what happened?
Yeah, again, I said it. I went from a victim to a victor. It's about taking full responsibility. And one of the things that I've learned is that you attract who you are. If you're 5, you attract a 5. If you're a 10, you attract a 10. And so I literally, from books, like honestly, like one of the things I tell people is I'm super transparent. It was literally the reading of books that allowed me to see, these people that we look up to, they're only great because they're doing great stuff, and the stuff that they're doing is stuff that you can do, So for me, I realized personal development was a key. Like everybody that I studied, I noticed they didn't talk about their mother and dad. They didn't talk about other people. Like they literally talked about study, got engaged and involved in traits and habits and characteristics, like however you look at it, that were about improvement, about getting better, about developing. And so then I got on this journey of self-assessing, and I stopped talking about what my mom wasn't doing, my father wasn't doing, my wife or my boss. And I really started daily evaluating myself. What's working? What's not working? What are you doing that's phenomenal? What are the things that you're doing to self-sabotage? And as I began that journey of self-assessing and developing myself personally, I woke up one day and I was with, the people that you mentioned on the back of the book, as well as other individuals. And so for me, it was ownership. It was personal development. It was there are certain opportunities you have, man, take advantage of those opportunities and stop looking at what you don't have. Stop looking at you didn't have your dad in your life and your mother wasn't married. Your mother didn't finish or go to college at that time. Your mom doesn't have a college degree. Like, don't look at what you don't have. You grew up in Chicago, the inner city of Detroit. Stop looking at what you don't have. Look at what you have and take full advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. And I'm telling you, and I mean, this, but people treat you different when you're a victim. They seem to run away from you. But when you take ownership, when you're a person of integrity and character, you say you're wrong when you're wrong, you ask for help when you need help, and when you take like full ownership of yourself, man, people treat you different. The doors they open up for you are different. Just life is different. Same Eric Thomas. My dad didn't come back in my life. My mom, didn't rehab me at 28. Like nothing changed. I didn't grow up in Beverly Hills. I was still from the same places, the same circumstances and situations. But when I changed my perspective and I started doing the daily work and I started to check Eric Thomas and demand more of Eric Thomas and hold Eric Thomas accountable, man, my life took off, man. It took off.
Eric, I want to talk about this concept of victim mentality because I think it's something that we talk about others, meaning like they have a victim mentality or they're a victim.
Yeah.
But I think we all have a victim mentality at some point in our lives. And I'd like you to maybe flip the script for a few moments and convince everyone, to quote you, that the world is not conspiring against you, that you are conspiring against yourself. Can you give us all some practical advice on recognizing that we in fact also have a victim mentality, and how do we acknowledge it, identify it, address it, and move beyond it? Stop accusing others of having it and acknowledge when you yourself have it.
Here's my deal. We don't live in a perfect world, and I'm not trying to, make the statement that we are, but here's what we are. We live in a world that we control. Like we literally live in a world we control. The beautiful thing about it is it's not your words, Scott, that it dictate my life. Like it's not what you're saying every day or, now that you know me, if you were to say something tomorrow about me, good or bad, it's not your words that shape my destiny. It's not your words that shape my life. Like it's not the words of my teacher or my principal. Let's just be honest. Like, okay, let's say it's high school. I'm only going to be with them for 4 years. Let's say it's college. I'm probably going to be with that teacher one semester. It's like, who is with Eric Thomas the most? Like who affects Eric Thomas the most? Like the words that Eric Thomas is in, what words does he hear the most? It's definitely not my English 101 professor. It's definitely not my trigonometry professor. Like those are not the words that I'm hearing daily. I'm hearing my words more than anybody. Like I'm in my mind, I'm hearing the stuff that I say. You'll never finish school. You'll never be successful. I'm not hearing what somebody says about me. Now, maybe I am taking what they're saying and reinforcing it, but it's definitely not their words that I'm hearing every day. Now, maybe they said something I'm embracing and I keep saying it over and over. But at the end of the day, I woke up and realized, like, Eric, it's not what your teacher thinks. Like, I don't think you're going to graduate from high school. It has nothing to do with what he thinks. I went from a GED to a PhD. When I said to myself, you don't have a learning disability? Like, so what? The teacher says, or whoever your counselor was, they saw some trait or characteristic that made them think you had a learning disability. No, this is funny. My daughter, I didn't realize it, an embarrassing moment as an educator. I sent my daughter to a school to study the SAT, ACT, and they came back to me and said, unfortunately, your daughter has a learning disability when it comes to math and science. And my daughter went on to take the SAT, didn't score phenomenally, but her grades were great. She got into Michigan State University and pretty much graduated in 3 years. And my daughter works for the foundation now, went and got her master's. And some child said to her, I read in your book, your dad's book, or heard some message that you had a learning disability. Like, how did you overcome that? And my daughter said, I never said I had a learning disability. That was the person that tested me. What I heard was I have to study a little longer. What I heard was I have to study harder. What I heard was I need more resources. I didn't hear I had a learning disability. I graduated from Michigan State, the same school that accepted me on academic provision. That I graduated quicker than most kids who finished school greater than I did and got better scores than me. So my daughter's point was, I never said that about me. That's what they said about that. I never embraced that. So when I got to a point where I was like, one, you have to acknowledge there are some areas that you're not as naturally as gifted as others. But then there are some areas that you're naturally gifted. You got to work regardless if you're naturally gifted or you're not gifted. Like, you got to stop procrastinating. Like, you got to get up and you got to finish what you start. And and when I got to a point where I stopped saying my mother didn't do this and my father didn't do that, now maybe honestly at 8 or 12, okay. But I was like 19 years old. I was 21 years old when I got kicked out of college on academic probation. So it just got to a point, Scott, I was like, E.T., what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Take ownership, and the world may conspire against you or not. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you're the captain of your own ship. As you've heard before, you are the author and the executive producer of your own life. And good or bad, sometimes cheerleading is bad. Oh, Eric the Great. I don't need that right now. I need a critic. I'm writing a book. I need an editor. So there are times in life where people will cheerlead or critique for you. At the end of the day, neither one of them are as important as what do you do? What are you doing? What choices are you making? How are you using your 24 hours? And just remember, at the end of the day, man, it's the choices that we make that determine our lives, not the choices or the words of other people that design our lives.
I could just end this interview right here because that was a powerful 10 minutes. It's so very true. As you were speaking, Eric, your friends call you E.T. I was thinking about all the relevance that what you just said in my own life, right? How many things have been said about me from the outside world that were not accurate or true, and how I early in life let them impact my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my trajectory. I want to pivot to this idea of superpowers. Yes. And how does someone find their superpower? And before you answer that, I'd like you to connect it back to this call to action you have around kind of tuning out the outside world, the external world you call it, because sometimes that can lead you down the wrong path of what aren't your superpowers. Let's spend some time just listening to you talk about the process of finding and igniting a person's superpowers.
And you know what? I think we all know, or at some point we were introduced to our superpower by some person or some circumstance or situation, some environment. But I think, for me, I remember playing the violin when I was a kid. Oh, Scott, I loved everything about the violin. Everything. I love string instruments. To this day, I can listen to, some classical music with a violin or a harp. I just love strings, right? And I remember being so excited about playing the violin. I remember being so excited about, the little baby orchestra that we had, at our middle school. And I remember carrying, the case with the violin, bringing it home. We had this was back in the day when they had music programs. So your parents didn't have to pay for it. If you wanted to do music, you do music. And I remember walking home from school, being from the urban community. And I remember a couple of my friends looking at the violin and laughing at me. And I remember, Scott, that day, me not feeling the same about the violin as I felt before the outside world knew I was playing the violin. And being ridiculed. Oh, you staying after school? You're not playing football? You're not playing basketball? Oh, Eric's he's playing the violin. Oh, yeah. And the community that, whether geographically or, I chose these people because, we shared common interest or whatever it was. I cared so much about what they thought about the violin that I put the violin down. Now, years later, look a little bit more older, more mature. I'm at a church and they're doing a week of prayer and they give me an opportunity to speak. I promise you, they told us a month before. I must have practiced every day, all day. I read stuff. I listened to other speakers. And I remember when I got on stage and spoke at that church, I'm definitely not saying it was my best message ever. I'm not saying that they would say it was my best message ever. But when it's your superpower because it comes so natural to you and it may be difficult for others. It's you eat it, sleep it, dream it, breathe it. You don't even have to do anything. It's just the thought of it and boom, you're great at it. You're good at it. And so for the first time, I got on stage, I had a mic, I spoke, the crowd, they loved me, the Bible school teacher, Sunday school teacher, they, gave me great reviews. And from that day forth, I was like, this is speaking is just what I do naturally. Most people get on stage and, they have this fright and this fear. Now I'm a little nervous. I do have butterflies, but the type of butterflies that, just give me a great feeling, the goosebumps, give me a great feeling. And I knew it came natural to me. It was easy for me. It wasn't something I had to study or practice or do, or nobody had to pull or prod me. It came natural. So I think we all know what our superpowers are. I think sometimes in life when we say our superpower out loud and people don't respond to it in the way we respond to it, I think we end up putting it down. But again, to me, it's something that you do. It comes easy. It's natural. People love it when you do it. People are drawn to you because you do it. I think that's how you know what your superpower is. And it just electrifies you. You can do it all day and not, and be energized. You don't get drained. You don't feel bad about it. You can just do it and do it and do it. And so for me, I think that's how you know you're a superpower. And if you don't let people talk you out of it and you keep doing it, just worlds begin to open up to you because of it.
Eric, since I read your book some time ago, most of these viewers and listeners know that I'm a parent with my wife, Stephanie, to 3 young boys. We have 3 sons, 8, 10, and 12. And I consistently reinforce in them what I think their superpowers are. And superpowers aren't always speaking on stage or writing books or big things. Superpowers can be empathy. They can be awareness. It can be reading the body language or the emotions of someone else. Not every superpower is this big, grandiose, life-changing thing.
Absolutely.
I'd like you to talk about the nexus of finding your superpower and combining it with your why. This is an important part of your book, is putting these two things together, because I think this says easy, but it does hard. Not everyone knows what their why is, their mission, their purpose, their passion, and not everyone knows what their superpower is. Can you give us some practical steps or techniques, tips on how you find your superpower and combine it with your why?
Yeah, I think you find your superpower in your environment, right? So it's funny, I was talking to, pretty much what I call our CEO of our company, CJ. And I was telling CJ, like, okay, CJ, we're going to, buy this building and we're going to allow, people to come in and get trained or whatever. And I've got this person supporting this person supporting. He was like, hey, man, I feel you. Like, I know you need to, duplicate yourself. I've read the books. He said, Eric, but you got to be careful, because it's not your speaking that draws people to you. It's the fact that you really care and love and are concerned about the interest of people, almost to the same extent or greater than they are for themselves. He was like, a lot of people, Eric, they can speak. They have the gift of, gab, they're orators, but the heart that you have for people, the fact that you love people and you want to see people do well. And, if you're at the airport, you stop to speak to everybody. Like, you give everybody eye contact and you make them feel in that 30 seconds to 3 minutes that they're actually talking to you, that there's nobody else in the world, that nobody else matters. And so, yes, I do it professionally now, but when I was a bus boy at the Olive Garden, or when I was a cash register at McDonald's, or when I flipped burgers, at Burger King, or when I was the big brother to Janiko, my sister, my middle sister. I have another sister, Mallory, who's 14 years younger than me, but as a neighbor, when I'm helping everybody in the neighborhood and buying, every kid in the neighborhood, a Christmas gift, or I'm going up to their school, or, I'm praying with America. CJ was like, yo, Eric, you speak well, but like you said, Scott, your care and you empathize with people. That's on a whole other level. So for me, I think when you figure out what that thing is you do, and like you said, it could be smile. People say all the time when I walk into a building, I don't even know these people. They're like, why are you smiling like that? Like, you have such an infectious smile. You got such a big smile. When you walk in the room, I'm only 5'9". When you walk in the room, there's this big presence when you walk in the room. Like, we thought you were taller than because of what we saw on YouTube and your passion and your power. So for me, my why is, how can I use caring to help people get through cancer? Well, how can I use my caring to help people who fail a bar exam? How can I give them hope, through care, or hope through my words? Or how can I help a person who lost their father, and they're thinking about? And so my why became, how can I take the gift that I have and make the world of the people whose world I'm in a better world? So for my wife, when she was diagnosed with MS, and the doctor was saying, hey, the work that you do as a registered nurse, breast and cervical cancer, you probably shouldn't do that anymore. It's kind of stressful. And so for me, say, hey, I'm going to get on the stage, and this stage is not going to just be about speaking, but I'm going to put you in a position where you can retire, work for the church. This is going to give me an opportunity to put my kids through school. We just sent 20 kids to Dubai, for over a week from some of our urban communities to change their lives. So I'm using my gift. We sent 25 kids to the Super Bowl this year to the Super Bowl in LA, and so it's like, how do you take what you do and make maybe your mom's life better, your dad's life better, your siblings' life better, your students, your teachers, your peers? Like, how do you take what you do and really make the world a better place? And I think once you figure out what your superpower is, it's definitely connected to helping someone or something get better.
Eric, let's talk about comfort. When I am asked how I've achieved any success in my life, to the degree I have, I'll say, I'm like the master of self-disruption. I have a communications undergraduate education. I've been in sales leadership, marketing.
Yes.
I'm an author of 6 books and a column and a podcast and a radio program and product development, and I just constantly disrupt myself.
Yes.
And I don't, a few weeks ago, we had someone write in and said, for 17 weeks, I've really tried to like your podcast, but I just can't find myself to like the host, meaning me. And I'm thinking, it took you 17 weeks to figure out you don't like me? It was kind of funny. But my point is, I think one of the things I've done well in life is to quote you in the book. To get to that next level, you gotta learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Riff on that.
Yeah. So guys, go with me if you don't mind. But I studied the crocodile, which is a ferocious, animal, believe it or not, right? You see it sometimes it's in a wild, how it will even, attack a lion, right? A leopard, right? But one of the things I studied is he's at its most vulnerable moment after it eats. So they were saying if there's ever a time an alligator, crocodile, if there's ever a time like you can dismantle them, with your bare hands, is after they've eaten, they go into this comatose state, that allows them, really takes away their superpower. And so what I discovered about man is that sometimes when we're at our greatest level of success, we're at our greatest danger, right? Because we get relaxed and comfortable. And what we don't realize is that in comfort, you're actually not your best self. I find that I generally pick up weight after, 9 months of, working out. And then once it gets cold, it's the winter months here in Detroit. You're not out and about as much. You're kind of in the house, watching TV, probably eating more. I find that I've had a successful year. And now I'm kind of, Scott, like, hey, I deserve to treat myself. And treat myself turns into 1 or 2 days of eating junk food or whatever I'm eating. And 1 or 2 days not working out. It turns into a week. It turns into a month. And it's like, honestly, when I'm not where I want to be in terms of my ideal weight, when I'm not where I want to be in terms of my ideal diet, when I'm not where I want to be in terms of, my career, I find that those are, man, when I was homeless, oh man, E.T. was a bad man. When I got kicked out of college on academic probation, oh man, E.T. was a bad man. I noticed that at some of my lowest points, I go the hardest. And so what I told myself was, Eric, when you get to some of your best points in life, like just create chaos, like you said. Just create it. Why? Because sometimes success creates comfort, and sometimes comfort doesn't bring the best out of us. Sometimes comfort doesn't make us the best version of ourselves. Sometimes comfort doesn't create the best ideas. Sometimes comfort doesn't bring the greatest level of creativity. But I found that sometimes when life is not going the way you think it should go, you find a way to be your best version. And I just said to myself, hey, instead of letting life create those moments, like you said, Scott, Eric, create your own. So I'll give you guys an example. When I finished the 4-year degree, I don't know that I needed a master's degree to be a motivational speaker. But then when I got the master's degree, I said, hey, I'm going to go get the PhD. I don't know I needed a PhD to be a motivational speaker, but I needed something to wake up to. I needed something to want me to get dressed. I needed something to give me energy to go to bed and want to wake up the next day. I needed something to get me on the treadmill. I needed something to give me life. And so after the PhD, everybody's like, what you going to do, E.T.? I said, the Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Martin Luther King is a hero. He got it. Mother Teresa has it. Gandhi has it. Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela. So I said, I want the Nobel Prize. Somebody said, Eric, it's been years and you haven't gotten it. I said, no. It's not the actual prize I want. It's the hunt. It's the hunt. It's the exploring, the discovering. It's the going after it. It's the getting up in the morning and figuring out what do I need to do in order to make that happen. It's having a goal in front of me. So I just find that when you don't have a goal, when you don't have something to hunt, when you have nothing to shoot for, you're in this place called comfort. It can get a little dangerous. And no, Scott, we're not saying don't enjoy life and don't enjoy some of the rewards that come with the work that you put forward. We're not saying that. But we're saying that if you celebrate too much, that last reward might actually be your last reward.
Wow. You say that knowledge is the new money. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I used to always, like, how do I get money? And I made money to focus, and quite honest, it escaped me. But when I realized that better is a book than a well-built house. Better is a book than a well-built house. Why? Because the elements hurricane, tornado, whatever can destroy your home. But a book, which is knowledge, you can never destroy. And I realized, Eric, man, if you get knowledge, they can take everything you own and you can rebuild. But if all you have is stuff, once the stuff is gone, you can't recreate stuff by having stuff. But if you have wisdom and you have understanding and like you get certain things, you understand certain things, there's an industry that you understand, Eric, you can lose everything and you can rebuild it. So knowledge is the new money in that I didn't know how to write a New York Times bestseller. I didn't have that information. I actually paid a coach who gave me the information, and people were like, are you dumb? You paid $30,000 for somebody to show you how to get on a New York Times. You could just go to Google. I was like, I just need a human interaction. But guess what I told somebody? Now that I have it, now I can charge somebody and teach somebody what it takes to get on a New York Times bestsellers list. Why? Because I have the knowledge now and I have the information. So that's what I mean by stuff doesn't necessarily mean if you lose it all, you can get it back. But with knowledge and information, you can rebuild anything you built, and you can probably build it better. Why? Because you have the information. So every kid in school, I say, hey, I told a group of kids today, I was at a school, and I said, man, if I gave you $1 million, but it was $1 million in quarters, and I put those quarters all on the floor and told you, you had to pick up those quarters, all of them, to get that $1 million, what would you do? And they said, of course, we pick up every quarter to get that $1 million. I said, but here you are in the library and you haven't picked up one book. There's millions of dollars worth of information in each one of these books that can help you to become successful. Yet you walk past the library, you never come in it. But if you were to come in here and read every one of these books and actually apply the information you got from this book, your life and your family's life will go to a whole other level. So you walk past knowledge, but you'd run toward money. That inflation or whatever it is, that money wouldn't even be what it was worth after you picked it up, not including Uncle Sam. But the knowledge that you have, you can build anything and create anything and design your life any way you want to create it once you have that information. Knowledge is the new money. Get you some.
Eric, in 250 episodes, 5 years of this podcast, I've never once put someone on the spot, except for now. And so I'm going to ask you the following question, because you are a voracious reader. We share this in common. What are your top 5 favorite books? And one of them cannot be a Franklin Covey book, because we would occupy many of the top spots of most people's. But beyond our seminal books, I'd like you to tell me, what are 5 of your favorite books? Not your top 5, but what are your 5 favorite books?
No, I got you. So, of course, the first one would be How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Why?
You know, I think at the end of the day, emotional intelligence is so important. And I've come across so many intelligent people who have hit a glass ceiling because they don't know how to deal with people. Okay. And so I just believe How to Win Friends and Influence People is, hey, of course there are tasks that need to be done, but there are people that have something to do with those tasks. So if you can master tasks and people, then you're not going to have a glass ceiling. My second one was Think and Grow Rich. And of course, I've done both Napoleon Hill and I've done Dennis Kimbrough. Think and Grow Rich, a Black choice, right? Love both. Of course, I love Dennis Kimbrough's because many of the characters in the book look like me. But the reason why I love that one is because, and I know you, Scott, you've done this exercise before, but the one where they say, hey, you're in a room, no windows, imagine you're in a room, no windows, no doors, no tools, nobody can help you. How do you get out? You know, and of course, the trick is you imagine yourself. It said, imagine you're in the room. So imagine yourself out. And so that book taught me that you can think your way to anything you want in life. If your brain can think it, then either you or the people in your circle of influence have a way of helping you to create that. And that was important for me because as a victim, I thought as a victim. As a victor, I thought as a victor, and I got both of the things that I thought and I wanted. The other one, which is a great book to me, is the greatest, salesman that ever lived, Og Mandino. And I just love the practical, he said, hey, 90 days, do this every day, 3 times a day. And so I will persist, and I will greet this day with love in my heart. I needed that book because I had a lot of dreams and goals, but I didn't have a lot of steps, right? And I needed the steps. That book gave me like, hey, you do this for 90 days, you do this for 180 days, you do this for 360 days, and you mark the scrolls and you learn the scrolls and you live out the scrolls, everything is going to be great. The fourth book for me was Dennis Kimbrough's spinoff of Daily Motivation for African-American Success. And the reason why I love that was my first 365-day book. And again, you are what you consume. And so if you're consuming these thoughts, like you're literally consuming the characteristics of some of the greatest people in the world. And as you're consuming it, you're developing yourself and becoming like them. And eventually you're going to become like them. I thought it was funny when you said you should live here, here, and here. Scott, that's a unique conversation. And it's a conversation that only certain people who've experienced America in a certain way would think. I remember when I bought my home in California, I remember the bank here, the lady said to me, well, what are you going to do with your home in Michigan? I'm like, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to buy the house next door for my parents and she couldn't, like, what are you doing with multiple homes? She just couldn't think that way, right? And then, of course, the final book, and again, it goes back to you said, don't mention these books, which Speed of Trust would definitely be top one in there, but because I can't go there, John Maxwell's collection, but the most important minutes in a leader's day. And the reason why I thought that book was phenomenal was because the first time I had read a book with so many gems in it and so much knowledge, but from a biblical base, and that every single chapter and every single page, was wrapped in, consumed with biblical principles. And so it was a way of both of my worlds coming together. And I'm not suggesting that does not ever happen, but a lot of times, in certain environments, those two worlds don't collide. And so this was the first time I got an opportunity to have both of those worlds collide. So those are, like you said, many, many books, but those are 5 books that are key in my development. And again, you said, don't say it, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Road Less Traveled, those classics were some of the first books that people in business introduced me to. And by beholding Scott, literally, I became changed.
Can I add one to your reading list?
Please.
So a friend of mine and a former guest here is a man named Robin Sharma. You know him, of course, as the author of the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And like you, he's a frequent speaker and coach. He wrote a book recently called The Everyday Hero Manifesto. Kind of an odd titled book. The Everyday Hero Manifesto. I'm going to buy that book and send it to you for the holidays.
Please.
Look for that book to come your way shortly.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have to chase all the homes you're moving to and where you're headed to find it, but I'll find you. I'll find you, sir. I'll find you. I'll just call up MJ. MJ will tell me where you are. Okay, last topic, sir. And this one kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I've heard it before, but I don't know. It's like the student is ready when the teacher is there, or the teacher is ready when the student is there, whatever that thing I slaughtered.
Whatever happens.
Yeah. Well, so you were my teacher, and I became ready. Now, everybody listen to this, because this is profound, and Eric's going to leave us in the next 2 minutes with some context. You ready, Eric?
Yes, sir.
Eric has no idea where I'm going. You must be willing to sacrifice what you are for what you will become. Riff on that.
Yeah. So let me give it to you this way, guys. I had to give up, being a victim. I had to give up. It's my mother's fault. Scott, what a place of comfort, knowing that you're homeless, you're a high school dropout, you're eating out of trash cans, your world is unraveling. What a comfort to know it's somebody else's fault, Scott. What a comfort it is to know, if my mom would have just not, at 17, got pregnant with me, my father would have just been responsible, I wouldn't even be here. What a joy to know it has nothing to do with the choices that I've made. It has nothing to do with the words that are coming out of my mouth. It has nothing to do with my paradigm and my values. Poor me, it's my mom. It's my dad's fault. What comfort and putting the responsibility on somebody else. I literally had to give up that person to potentially get to. It's like writing a book, and my writing coach, after all this sacrifice, told me, well, you know, you may not make it to the New York Times bestseller. I'm like, what? Well, what are we doing this for? Like, what is this? Why do I got to call you every day? Why do I have to explain to you the way I'm doing things? It's like, and so you sacrifice not even knowing, but it's like, yo, I'm going to give up this victim mentality to see. Meaning what? I'm going to say, I've got a good friend of mine who said, why do you always say it's your fault when sometimes it has nothing to do with you? I say, because if it's their fault, they have the power, they have the control. But when I say it's my fault, I have the power, I have the control. And so for me, saying, you're going to have to give up this victim mentality that has been your best friend, your blankie, you know, it's been your life. And you're going to have to sacrifice that for taking ownership. And we don't know where this is going to land us. We don't know where we're going to be. It's going to be so painful to take responsibility, to know that you're here because of the decisions you made. It's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. It's going to take you years and years and years to get out of this hole. But sacrifice what you can be for what you are now. And I honestly have to tell that 22, 23-year-old, thank you so much for making me let go of that mindset and that mantra that it was everybody's fault but mine. And thank you for allowing me to take personal responsibility, because had I stayed a victim, I would probably still be homeless, still be a high school dropout, maybe in prison, maybe dead. We'll never know. But because that kid at 23 decided to take full ownership and say, your mom's, it's not her fault. You're not 13 no more. It's not your dad's fault. He doesn't control your life anymore. It's your fault. And once I took ownership, man, so that's what I'm saying. Sacrifice even good to get to great. And I promise you, if you make the sacrifice for what you are now, for the future version of you, man, you're going to be happy, and everybody around you will benefit from you making that sacrifice.
Your and my journeys have nothing in common, right? White guy from a upper middle class family in Central Florida. That was not you. Where we've ended is somewhat similar, although you've sold more books and have more homes and have advanced degrees. So I'm definitely studying everything you're doing.
I don't know about that, Scott. That's kind of you, though.
No, it's accurate. I'm not kind. It's accurate. I'm not actually kind. I'm just generally accurate. I want to say a couple of things to all of our listeners and viewers. Buy this book. The book is extraordinary. I know nothing about movie recommendations. I'm not even so credible when it comes to parenting or relationships, but I'm pretty solid when it comes to recommending books. Look at the set behind me. It's a solid book. It's absolutely worth buying, and maybe even buying for your kids, because the maturity that you share about your journey with your stepfather in the beginning was really powerful. This book is worth reading just based on where Eric shows his vulnerability on how he treated his stepfather and treated his mom and what her intentions were versus how you were manifesting them. I'll leave that there. Secondly, it's a very tender story about how you reacted and your family responded when your wife was diagnosed with MS. And it was a gripping story listening to you. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, okay, so what would I do if that happened to my family? My wife happens to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, and it wouldn't have the same impact. Obviously, we don't wish my wife anything other than health, but me as the primary survivor, or primary provider, what happens if it happened to me? Would you talk about this concept of when someone is facing a challenge ahead, that they see it coming, they're not quite sure what's on the horizon. You did not expect the MS diagnosis with your wife. This is not a small issue. This was a life-changing issue for your family. What should they do? What frame of mind should someone be in? Because the storm's coming for all of us. Whether it is a medical diagnosis, a financial setback, a nuclear war, losing your job, big or small, all of us are going to have some storm coming our way. I want you to send us off not morose or fixated on that, but how do you prepare us for the coming storm in our life?
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Don't be so consumed with the obvious that you don't see the blessing in it. And again, it can be overwhelming. The physicians, it's their job to say the worst. Dee, you may lose your sight. You may be bound to a wheelchair. You may not be able to control because these lesions are on your brain. Your spine, you may not, the messages may not convey properly from your brain to your spine to your hand. You may not, your gait may not be steady. From an intimate standpoint, from a working standpoint, like a lot of who you are right now, you may lose that. Your marriage may be different. Your parenting, you can lose your short-term or long-term memory. That's a lot. This was a major diagnosis. But what I kept saying to myself was, never let a good crisis go to waste. The way you think about this, Eric, is just as critical as accurate it is. It's a reality. As far as the physicians are concerned, they've seen this play out. They've done their research. They have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of cases, right, to base their diagnoses on. They're not making this up. This isn't something that's new. So it was overwhelming for both of us, but more so for my wife because my wife had it. And I had to explain to my wife in that moment, you can, you will, you must get through this. And so we created a mantra. I can, I will, I must. I can, I will, I must. You can get through it, you will get through it, you must get through it. Your kids have not finished high school yet. They haven't finished college. They haven't gotten married. Like, they need you. You need to be there for them. We're going to get through this. And I believe she still has MS. When we do the MRI, nothing has changed. It hasn't progressed, but nothing has changed. But what has changed is the way I spoke about it, the way I embraced it. Scott, I started telling my wife, like, hey, well, at least we got 8 dates a year. And she's like, what do you mean by that? I was like, well, you got to go to do an MRI twice a year. So we'll go for ice cream afterwards. We'll go to the mall if you want to. We'll go out for dinner. We'll turn it into a date. You got to go get your eyes checked twice a year. So we'll turn that into a date. You got to go see your neurologist twice a year. We'll turn it into a date. I just start trying to make it fun, and start not just get so overwhelmed with the reality of a chronic illness and how it's going to change our lives. But it was like, hey, you are, you've lost your energy. You don't have like 24 hours of energy anymore. So we'll turn a nap into something fun. We'll take a nap every day. We'll read a book before we take the nap. We'll wake up afterwards. We'll sit down by the fireplace. We'll watch a favorite show. We never really watched TV like that before. But it's like, hey, we're going to take what the doctor turns into a tragedy and we're going to turn it into a triumph. And so I would just say, again, everybody is either out of a storm, out of it, headed into one, in the midst of it, or coming out of one. It's the cycle of life. So it doesn't matter what happens to us. It's how we respond to what happens to us. True. That's most important. So again, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Profound words from Dr. Eric Thomas. I think the most important thing I've ever heard in my life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Eric Thomas is in the house today on leadership. You. Ignite your power, your purpose, and your why. Managed to scrounge up some endorsements from Chris Paul, Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders, and Ed Milet. Ed Milet, by the way, is one of my favorite interviews of all time. Been twice on this podcast. Eric Thomas, happy holidays to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.